Hello, I hope you're doing well today. If you're not, if you're in need of any assistance in any way, please reach out and I will do my best to assist you. I had some really great questions recently. I want to kind of follow up on those. They were focused around MagicaVoxel and sounds using the CS1 game engine. Okay, let's dive in. The first question is kind of like around the idea of sharing MagicaVoxel model files and so forth. There's a couple considerations. If you're going to share with somebody who is also going to use MagicaVoxel to maybe further edit your file or possibly just use it as inspiration to load it up into their um, on their computer in MagicaVoxel, then you would export it as a Vox file. You go down to export in the bottom right. So if you go down to export and then click Vox, it's important that when you do so, and I might as well just go ahead here and let me export it to, let me go to some other folder here, packet tracer. Let me see. Dun, dun, dun. Let me go into, maybe I'll put it in this game dev folder, and I will make a new folder and I will call it export maybe underscore examples. Okay, so I made this new folder, export examples, and I'm going to save this Vox file in there. Now, if I open up the Finder and I go to that now, if I go over here to Documents, and I go over into that game dev folder, export examples, you'll see it's just one file. However, that file in and of itself is not enough if that were to be shared with somebody. It doesn't have the colors, it doesn't have the palette basically. So I have to export the palette separately. So I need to go down here to the bottom left, click on this button and to export the palette. And then I'm going to go to that same area. I'm going to go over here to Documents. I'll go down to that same folder, Export Examples. And then I will save the palette there. And then if I go back in here, now I have the palette and the Vox file. The best thing to do at that point is make a new folder. And I'll just say maybe house. It's Charles A. Jordan. So I'll say CAJ underscore house. Now I have both of those files, the Vox file and the palette, which is the PNG. Put them both in the folder or into that, put them both into the folder. And then I'm going to right click on the folder and compress it. And this compressed folder with both of those files, that's what you would share with somebody. Okay, so that's how you would share a MagicaVoxel Vox file along with a palette with somebody who you'd be collaborating with. If they're going to need to use it in MagicaVoxel. But let's look at another situation. What if they don't need to use it in MagicaVoxel? What if they were going to maybe edit it in Blender? What if they were going to do some edits to it in Blender, let's say? How would that work? Well, you would probably then export it as an OBJ file. You go down to the export and click OBJ, and let's export it to that same place. I'm going to click this OBJ, save it. If I go down to that folder now, you'll see that there's actually 3 files. When you export an OBJ, it actually exports 3 files, including the, as you can see right here, including the palette. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to go a new folder. I'm going to say CAJ house. This time I'm going to say OBJ. So I know it's an OBJ file as well as the other 2 files, which are the MTL and the PNG. The MTL file is basically the defines how the palette connects to the geometry. So let me right click on the OBJ house and compress that. And that's what you would share if you were going to give it to somebody who's going to open it in Blender. Now how do they open it in Blender then? So in Blender, if Go to Blender at that point. Let's just say I'm gonna get rid of this default cube, press X and then enter. Say they were gonna import that into Blender. I'm gonna go import and then wavefront OBJ. And then we're gonna go down to the documents and then go down to that same directory. Go to exported examples. I'm gonna go to the OBJ file and import it. And there it is. And again, it's not, see how, look at that. It's not centered. It depends on the version that you have of MagicaVoxel. Some of the current versions do not export it with the correct transform. In other words, it's not centered when you export it as an OBJ, which is not a problem. We just have to do a little extra work here. If we click on the Y-axis up here, we can then press G and move it down to the center. It's a little bit off. I'm going to zoom in a little bit and press G and kind of get it centered a little bit better. I'm going to click X now. Click X up here. I'm going to center it along this axis. Maybe I want it to be centered. Maybe I don't want it in the very middle of the house. Maybe I do want it like that. It depends on how you want it oriented. If I wanted this completely centered, then I could go like G and then also center it along this axis. Zoom in a little bit more. I can see it's a little bit up. Go G and get it down here more accurately. I can zoom. You can zoom in more, make it more accurate, however accurate you need. Looking down from the top, you can see it's nicely oriented that way. You're saying, where's the colors though? Where is the material? Well, if I click over here in the top right, not the far right, but the one next to it, I can see the material get loaded in, and now I can see my colors. Now, if I wanted to edit some of the materials that you see right here, if I want to edit, make a custom material for something, I can show you how we can do that really fast. A little added bonus, I guess. So if I, here's the first thing, after you center something that you bring in as an OBJ, it's important to get rid of all the doubles in the geometry. Basically, all the little vertices, all your little endpoints, there's basically doubles for every one, and that's something that's a consequence of the way that MagicaVoxel exports. But that's okay. We can just tab into edit mode, and once you're into edit mode with this, we will go to Mesh, Cleanup, Merge by Distance. Now watch what it says down here. Look at that. 7,058 vertices removed. Wow, that's considerable. And if I tab back in the object mode, it still looks perfect. I got rid of, see that? There are some artifacts with the way the lighting kind of hits onto the surface. You can see that there's like some artifacts that affect the shading values somewhat, but on this particular model, I actually like them. It actually looks a little bit like baked lighting. That saves me some time and having to go through and bake shadows onto the texture to make it more realistic and performant in the game. So you can try that out. If you do have consequences from doing that you do not like, you can always undo it. You can go Command Z and undo it. It always helps to also save your file as a Blender file. Go File, Save As, save it as a Blender file so you can come back to what you did. Another thing you could do is change a material. Maybe I wanted to change this material up top on these little circles. How would I do that? Okay, so I can tab into edit mode again. I can go to face select up here. Maybe I want to zoom in on that material right over here. Let's just go down over here. And let me just click off to the side and let me zoom in here. And with face select, I'm going to go to material tab. I'm going to add a new material slot by clicking plus over here. I'm going to click plus to add a new material in that material slot. I'm going to call this shiny blue, shiny underscore blue, because I want to make this shiny. And then down here in this area, I can adjust the shader. I can make this blue, and then I can make It's shiny by running the metallic value up to 1. And let's just see what that does, and then we can edit it further using the node editor. So if I go and scroll over here, shiny blue is selected. I'll come back to that in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and start selecting these faces. I'm going to do a box select just by dragging a box. That'll get me a lot of the faces. Then I have a little bit more to get on there. So once I got those faces, I will then shift and select the faces I'm missing. I think I might have gotten all the ones. And then I'll click shiny blue and then click assign. Now, if I tab out of edit mode, now I can see it has that shiny blue kind of material. So, and it kind of has some kind of weird shader artifacts. And if that looks cool for you, it has a nice accentuation to that upper window, then you can go with that. If you wanted to kind of play with that material more, what I would suggest is going into the shader editor. You can go over here and just go, well, let's actually go over here, I'm sorry, and go into the shader editor. And you could just switch over that way, selecting on the shiny blue, and you can go in here and start playing around with the material more. You can bring in other types of, nodes in this node editor, and you can change the material. All kind of cool YouTube videos on that. Not going to get into that right now. Let's just leave it at that and go back to the 3D viewport. Let me just apply this same. I like that. It's pretty nice. Kind of looks like there's a light on up top there. Let me kind of zoom in over here and do the same thing on this one. Let me go down into tab into edit mode. And let me just drag a box around here and try to get the rest of them by shift, selecting those. And see if I can get those. I'm holding shift down, by the way. And then I'll just click over on the shiny blue on the right, and then click assign. Tab it into object mode. There it is. Now I got it on that one. And then I'll do the same thing on this particular one here. Let me go over here, tab it into edit mode, and I'm going to go ahead and box select these faces. Hold shift down and select the remaining faces that need to be selected. And then go over to the material slot, select the material in question, and click assign. Tab into object mode to inspect it. Looks good. We've got, I think, one more to do, right? Go over to that side, kind of zoom in on it so we know what we're working on. Tab into edit mode, go over here, box select as many as we can get right there. Hold shift down, select the remaining faces. Notice I'm in face select mode up here. I'm in face select mode right there. Shift, select the remaining faces, click on go to the material slot, select the appropriate material, click assign, tab it into object mode, and there we have a pretty neat effect for those top windows there. So something that we couldn't have got in MagicaVoxel with the palette, something that's kind of a metallic-y thing that would have been happening. And then we can, from there, we can edit, put it into the game if we wanted to add it into the game. How can we add it into the game from here? Well, we can just go over here and just go File, Export. Now this isn't going to be the right size for the game. Let's actually check the sizing first. So what's a good reference? Well, a door is. Let's go over here on the left and click on this measuring tool. Let's see how tall that doorway is. 1.75 meters, 1.7 meters. That should probably be about 2.2. This is pretty close to the right size. It's a little too small. We're going to scale it up a little bit more. So I'm going to actually just go S, scale up the house a little bit. In doing so, I kind of lost my centering. So I'm going to go back and recenter it. Go grab it, move it down right there. And now I'm going to go check the measurement, see how tall it is now. Let me get my measurement tool and go on the window or the door. So that's 1.88. Oh, still a little too small. It needs to be a little bit bigger yet. So I'm going to click on the whole thing, go S, make it a little bit bigger. I think this will be significantly bigger now. And let me look at it from the front, the back. Let me center it, press G, put it back down on the ground. and go back around here. And now I'll remeasure it with the measurement tool, going from the top of the door. Now it's 2.3. So that's definitely big enough right now at this point. So it's over 2.3 meters for the door, maybe even a little bit too high. That's it. Now it's a pretty big door at that point. So, but you want to check your dimensions in terms of the size of things before you put it in the game. So that's close enough right now. I'm just going to go File, Export GLTF, which will make a GLB file. I'm going to call this, let me say CAJ_house, and I'll put it on the desktop. And then I'll click Export to GLTF, and it will be a GLB file. Now what I'll do at this point is I'll do a remix for a game. And I'll do bit.ly CS1 remix. So this is a remix of using the CS1 game engine that is having the little park scene to it. So it's going to remix the, make a new remix of the game. I'm going to give this a name like CAJ house altogether. And I'm going to add an env file and an admin key, excuse me, I'm going to add an admin key. Now I'm going to go ahead and add that file into the assets. Go to the assets, I'm going to upload and go to my desktop and go to the CAJ house, and let me make this a little better size. Now I've uploaded it into the assets. I'm going to grab the URL for it, click copy. I'm going to go into the public index.html file. I am going to add it in here. I'm going to go below the player in the index.html. Just going to basically add a hyphen. Let me make this bigger so you can see it. See what I'm doing? I'm in the index.html file. Right down here below the player, I'm going to add an AGLTF model. And whoops. Inside of that first tag, I'm going to put source, src equals, and then inside of here, I'm going to paste that URL. It's going to be at the origin unless I give it a different position. So I'm going to go down here and type in position. I'm going to add a position component to it. And I'm going to set that position to maybe 0 for the x, negative 25. Well, no, sorry, 0 for the x, 0 for the y, and negative 25 for the z, or the z, whatever you prefer. And now it should be good. It should be in the game. And we could take a look at that in the game if we just go over to show. The index.html file does not get built into the source code, so it's just going to, you only have to edit the index.html. If you edit the index.html, you don't have to rebuild the project. So here I go into the game, log in, and there's the house.
Welcome to CS1 Community Park. Please join us at 9 p.m. for some tasty roasted marshmallow s'mores.
Now, of course, that tree is not in a very convenient place for where the house is, but you can see the house is in there, and the house is properly scaled. So yeah, that's actually a good scale for the house. We need some stairs or something, of course, and a navigation mesh to get into the house, but that's basically how we do that. Okay, ready to look at the next question or consider the next question. Let's go. Right now, let's go over to, actually, let's go into the source, core config, client config JSON. What we're going to look at here in this configuration file, which is in the source directory, in the core configuration directories, in the client config JSON file, what we have right here is essentially an easy access point for changing a lot of basic things. If I wanted to call this coolness, and then over here, if I wanted to change the welcome message to coolness abounds, whoops. And all right. So you can change a lot of things, obviously, just really quickly in this configuration file. One thing I want to point out here is related to a question that was asked about adding sounds. Maybe you have a friend, or maybe you yourself are a narrator, and you do voiceovers, you do radio plays, voice plays, um, or vocal effects, and you want to add some vocal sounds or some voiceovers, maybe for some NPC players, maybe just for some narration that happens at different points in the game. How would you do that? Well, you go to the client config file, go to this sounds section. In here you can see there's already some sounds specified. And then you would add another section here based on your sound. And I'll show you how to do that. So let's actually go over. Let's go to bit.ly edit sound, bit.ly/edit -sound. Takes me to a fine little utility online. You can use your own digital audio workstation if you want to. I find that this online editor works fine for what I need. So if I click new document here, or you can drop a document in there or a file, it brings up this little multi-track editor. So I can record something. I can, maybe if I was an NPC, and maybe I would have a foreboding message as you approach the house. I'd be an NPC, maybe standing out in front of the house. I'll say, okay, let me click right here. Don't go into the house. The house is haunted. Oh, oh, oh. Okay, that was a little cringy. So at the beginning of this, there's a bunch of empty space, so I want to maybe get rid of that. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to press delete, get rid of that. It's a little bit of empty space here at the end as well. Select that, press delete. All right, so I have this file. I'm going to play it. Don't go into the house. Maybe I wanted to make it lower, so I'll go over here to effects. Maybe I just go down to pitch and speed. You can do all kind of stuff. I'm just going to play around just a little bit so it's a little more interesting. Maybe just go down a little bit. Listen to what that sounds like. The house is haunted. A little too far down, maybe like that. Don't go into the house. Maybe the house is haunted. Okay, I'll apply that. Fine, all right. So I'm going to apply that kind of transform to the voice where it makes it lower frequency, and I'll just listen to it. Don't go into the house. Okay, so I'm going to use that in the game. I don't know why. Yeah, because I have a foreboding NPC character. But if you look at this wave kind of pattern here, it's not maxed out at all, so that's not too efficient. You want to have more dynamic range if possible, so you have more control over it in the game. So it's not always within this little decibel range. So how do you do that? You can go to effects and normalize, and that will stretch it out. Click apply, stretch it out as far as it can to fit all the peaks within the space, the headroom that you have available. Now if I test it. Don't go into the house. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to export it, go file, download. I'm going to say, maybe down here under the title, I'm going to say don't go in. Don't go in. Or maybe I would do it. So if you look at the way I'm kind of typing out the name, I'm thinking about that. I'm going to do don't go in. So I'm going to do this in kind of these, with these lead letters capitalized. Yeah, that's fine. That's the way I will capitalize it. And click download. It'll download it as an MP3 file. I'll go into the game. So I no longer need these, the editor open. I can go into the game. I'm going to go into the assets directory of the game. Now this would just be one of maybe 100 different lines that you have your voice actor or yourself use. This is just, like I say, just one. I'm going to drag and drop that MP3 file into the assets. Go down here. Don't go in. I'm going to grab that URL for it. I'm going to go down to the client config JSON. Go down to that same section we were looking at. Maybe make it a little bigger so you can read it a little bit better. I'm going to go down in the sound section. So after this last sound, I'm going to put a comma. So, and then inside of quotes down here, I'm going to put maybe don't go in. I'll camel case it. I'll start it with a lowercase d, I guess. And I'm going to go colon, and then in quotes, I'm going to place that URL. Oh, actually, hold it. I actually broke syntax. This actually has to be an object itself. So I literally have to make this double curly braces, go inside the double curly braces, and then go URL, and then colon, and then double quotes, and then paste it in. Now that's fine. So if you just look at how I was originally not following the pattern, just look at the other sounds up above it and make sure that you're following the syntax pattern, that you're using the right characters, the double quotes and the colon and this, the curly braces, and then double quotes again, and then the colon, and then double quotes. Follow the syntax, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and build this into the game, and then we'll use it, all right? So let's go ahead down to the tools, into the terminal. We'll open that up, and we'll build this into the game. So let's type in clear, and let's go ahead and type in pnpm run build. This will build the project. Now it's necessary when you edit anything in the source directory, for that to take effect in the game, you need to run the build. That's what I just did. Now we have to also run refresh on that build, so it pushes that new build into production. So now that that refresh has been run, now we can load up the game. We won't hear it in the game because it's not implemented in any API calls yet, but we'll be able to use it from the console. So if we go into the game,
Coolness abounds.
okay, so let's open up the console, and with Option Command J, and then we'll access that sound using the API for the sounds. So it's CS1 dot sounds, and then dot the name of the sound. Don't go in this case, and then play. Or you could do pause or whatever. There's a couple other methods on this. But now look what happens if I run this.
Don't go into the house. The house is haunted.
All right. So that's the API for accessing and playing the sound, or you could also stop it or pause it. So I'm going to actually copy that and put it into the actual game itself. And how's that going to happen? Rather than calling it from the JavaScript console. So what we're going to do here is go into the core components, my components JS, and we'll just start it over here. Whenever the game starts, we'll just play that. We'll paste that in there. CS1 sounds, don't go in, play. Maybe put a semicolon there. All right. And then let's go in and build that, and we'll see it will just play it after the game starts, after I log in. Let me clear this again. I'll run the build, and then we'll push that build into production with the refresh. So let's run refresh, push that build into prod, and let's go ahead over here and listen to that foreboding sound right after the game starts. So let's go in, and la la la, there it is, and log in.
Don't go into the house. The house is haunted.
Coolness abounds.
Okay, it's kind of overlapping with that welcome message, so you want to think about that. Of course, this isn't a very well thought out use of either the model at this point or the sounds, but hopefully you get the point. Any of your questions are so well received on my end. Please continue to put them out. You're wonderful. Again, if you need any help with anything, just let me know. Reach out to me. Could be with health, any kind of assistance that you need, just reach out, and I will do my best to be of assistance. That being said, take care of yourself and be creative.